Good morning.
Happy Thursday. Hope it's been a great start for you. I'm Kim Spillers.
And I'm Frank Spillers, and this is Rural Community Solutions TV live streamed, where we talk about creating an environment that helps family-friendly, youth-centered places attract people. So the environment is what creates the place. The environment is what attracts people to that environment. And today we're going to really dig down into how that environment was created and why people, one, live where they live, and two, join the organizations they join.
And three, I'm going to throw in is whether or not they stay in your community. And we're going to give you some tips on whether or not people feel welcome enough in the groups, in the circles, in the organizations, in the churches, in all of the places of community life, in the schools, in the school boards, everywhere, so that people want to stay once they come to either live in your community or visit it. And so very exciting, very important information that we're going to be talking about today. So let's jump in.
But this isn't just about your community. This is about creating civility. This is about helping lift up civility as we come through some kind of tumultuous times, something like that. It depends upon your viewpoint. It depends upon your viewpoint if we're coming in or coming out of a time where we have struggled. And that's the viewpoint that we really need to examine of why people feel the way they feel. And we have to understand that. And we use four pillars to create great communities. Now, if you want a great community, you need to not just do stuff. You need to create a culture that is a great community in your culture that attracts people. And if you're not attracting people, if you're not growing your population, that gives you a hint that you need to change your culture. You need to change something that's going to attract the people. And it's not going to be a playground. It's not going to be a trail system. It's not going to be any item, any tangible item. It's going to be the environment that you set with your people. All right. And so that is one of the clues that you need to look at. Are you growing or are you dying? And if you're dying, then something in your culture is repelling people from joining what you offer. So here, let's talk about what does create a sense of well-being. What a sense of well-being means that people are comfortable. And if you've been with us over the course of the last couple of days, we've talked about a comfort zone. We've talked about how people get comfortable and why they get comfortable. Because it's, like yesterday, what I said is that it's a habit. Habits are formed, and habits are like a warm bed. They're easy to get into, but really hard to get out of. So people's thinkings have been habitual, and how those thinkings and thought processes are grown has become because of their value system. And so we want to show you a model, and we adhere to this model quite frequently, all the time. This is how we describe people. A people's sense of well-being here is formed by their values, right? So take this as your community. Your community is formed by people with a sense of same values, right? And so pay attention, because this is how your community was formed.
Picture, if you will, the pure, raw earth. No wires, no fences, no roads, not even a farmhouse. No sign of civilization. This is what a person saw that was crossing the prairie in a wagon more than 170 years ago. They jumped off the wagon, looked around, and declared, "This is where I want to settle and build a town. A great place to live and a great place to raise my family." So they took a risk. They built a house made out of the land, planted food to eat, and cared for the land. Then they wrote back to their friends where they came from and described the great opportunity and promise that they have found. They invited who they knew to join them in their discovery, people they had a relationship with, and so they came, family by family, and those families invited others they knew who they wanted to live with within that community. The communities grew because the needs of the families grew, so entrepreneurs started businesses to meet those community needs. Ice houses, broom factories, general stores, and many other types of sole proprietor entrepreneurial businesses started up within the communities. All of our communities across this country, all around the world, were started in this way, with a vision of the future and a plan to grow with people.
So what matters about that video is that this is how our communities were started. Many, many years ago, depending on where you live in the country, on the East Coast, of course, it was 450, 500 years ago. Here in the Midwest, about 150 to 200 years ago. And then on the West Coast, of course, less than that. But no matter where you are in the geography of the United States, or wherever you are in the world for that matter, having an idea, knowing about your history of your community and of your county and of your region makes a big difference on how we can go forward today with ideas that reflect and honor what has been, and how we can use those to capitalize and move forward into the future with new technologies and new thinking and new machinery and new concepts and new populations of people. So that's where this triangle that we are using as a sense of well-being took shape and continues to form us each and every day.
So if when you're on our podcast, if you're just listening as you're driving here, picture a triangle with the word sense of well-being in the middle of it. And on each of the lines of the triangle, on each of the sides of the triangle, you have the word security. On another side, you have choice. And on the bottom of the triangle, on that side, you have quality of life. And then out with arrows pointing to security and choice, you have the word values. All right. So as you look at this triangle, it's a sense of well-being, because in the center of the triangle are the words sense of well-being. That's a person's core. That's their comfort zone. That's how they know that they are, you're comfortable, their sense of well-being. It's if you just sit back and you just go, okay, everything is right with the world and I'm feeling good about myself. That is a person's sense of well-being. Well, what happens because of that sense of well-being, what happens is a person is threatened, or a person's sense of well-being is upset by either their sense of security, they don't feel safe, their sense of choice, they don't have a choice in the matter, or the quality of life as they perceive it. You know, quality of life is a perception issue. A lot of us in economic development, we always focus on a person's quality of life or a community's quality of life. But really, that is a perception issue. So a person's sense of well-being is quality of life. How do they feel about their community? Do they feel comfortable in their community? Do they feel like they belong in their community? All that goes into the quality of life. Although security, choice, and the quality of life of a person's sense of well-being are formed by the values that that person holds. And it's those values that are attacked, those values that seem to be attacked, those values that a person upholds that seem to be not upheld and taken into consideration. And that's when a person's sense of well-being starts to get upset. So when you are looking at creating civility within your community, civility within your organization, think about a person's security. Think about their perception of quality of life. Think about their sense of choice. Do they have a choice in the matter? And then talk about their values. What are their values that they sense about their security? What are their values that they have about choice? What value does it help form their quality of life perception? And if you can have conversations, if you can perceive a person like that, then you can start to understand, and you can start to then build a relationship with that person that will help you build civility. And that's really where civility comes along. Because if people will be defensive, people will argue, they will get very defensive if they are defending their values. And that's where arguments come in, and that's where differences of opinions come in. But as long as we uphold another person's values, then we can have a discussion and we can build that relationship. That doesn't mean you have agreement with what they think, but they have the right and they have the value system to uphold their opinion. Right? And how do we go about upholding people's opinions, create that environment to where people can get along? Now, in our processes, we have 4 pillars that uphold a community, and that is building relationships, building engagement, building entrepreneurship, which is an entrepreneurial thought process, and building a collaborative attitude. And we use 4 words to create that environment. Now, those 4 words that build that environment are welcome, understand, comfort, and appreciate. So when you welcome, understand, comfort, and appreciate yourself and others, you uphold a person's values, and you secure and you anticipate, you secure a person's sense of well-being. Everybody has a right for the sense of well-being.
So what we intend from showing the video, that's a video that we have on our website. So if you wanted to watch it again there, you can see the rest of it. But the clip that we showed you is important because that's how your community was formed. When people jumped off that wagon and they planted that flag and they said, hey, this is where we're going to grow this community. Then they wrote back, didn't have email or texting at that time, but they wrote letters back to where they came from and said, oh my gosh, this is the most wonderful place. We have so much opportunity here. You have skills that we need here. Would you think about moving out there? And so that's how communities were formed. But they wrote back to people they like, who were family members. Maybe they didn't like them, but they had skills that they knew that the new community needed. And so often like-minded people moved and started a community. And that's how our communities kind of got this homogenous look to them, especially in rural America. And so that's why we feel that it's useful to look at your history to know how your community operates today, and then what you can use to capitalize on what is today to build into the future.
Because even your organizations are like this. So think about if you were in an organization, say you're in Kiwanis, if you're in Optimus, if you're in the Rotary, if you're in the Lions Club in your community, you think about that organization. Why did you join? It's because of your values. It's because you match your values with the values of the organization. You match your values with the other membership. You think alike, and so you feel like you match. When you join that organization, you're working with those other people that uphold the values of the organization, and the values of the organization that matches your values too. So as you look at the organizations and you look at why you do what you do, it's because your value system. And so describe your value and identify the values that you have. And then look around at your friends. Identify their values or talk to them about their values. And then look around to the people that you disagree with. Think about their values. Ask them about their values. Because there are some values that will cross. It's just a way that you perceive your quality of life. It's a way that you perceive, it's a difference that you perceive what's secure and what's not. What's safe for them might not be safe for you. And you have your own reasons for that. And it could be your value system, but you have to have and you have to understand that. Because a lot of people, okay, most people resist change. Don't resist change. I can't read my slide. Most people don't resist change. All right. Their programming resists change. Most people don't resist change. It's their programming that resists change. Now, how did they get programmed? How they grew up. In their family had a value system. In their community has a value system. And so that is how their sense of well-being was created. And we're going to get in deeper when we get into next week. We're going to get in deeper with how a person's thought process was formed and how a person's value system is formed, because it starts at an early age, like
third
the third
trimester.
Okay.
Starts before birth.
It starts even before your memory starts.
Yes.
Way before your memory starts. And that's your values. That's how you have been formed.
Whoops. Okay. Apparently.
So when you
the music goes on first.
so when you I lost my
That's
well,
okay.
okay.
So we're going into programming and how culture is programmed.
All right. So okay.
Remember, this is live.
Yeah, boy, I really lost that now.
Okay.
So if you're programming, okay, if your programming resists change, what we need to do in our communities, because our programming and our value system is going to create our culture in our communities, and it's our culture and our value system that we really look at. And so as
You get a star if you can name the movie and the song.
So what this is a cultural transition view, and I would urge you on our podcast to come to YouTube on the video and watch this video, because this is a diagram that we use for how to change, or how you can change your culture, and how do you get out of the comfort zone, because how do you work with somebody's sense of well-being and create transition in your community. Because as we have always said, people love change, they just don't like transition. And it's the transition from accepting one thing to accepting another as we start to change. Now, if you are resistant to transition, it's because of the speed of the transition is what you're really resistant to. And so as your community has grown with value systems, I want you to think about your community's makeup of its history and its culture and its belief system, and how you trust people within your community, because trust is a huge value that you have within your community. If you don't trust your community, then you look at your community pretty suspect and you don't want to live there. And that is part of your culture. And so we think about all of those things of history, culture, belief, and trust as a comfort zone, as an ice cube. And as you take an ice cube out of the freezer, it is in an ice cube tray, which has a form around it. Now, there's two ways you can change the structure and change the form of that ice cube. You might not change the structure in one way, all right, but you want to change the form either way, because it's that form of the comfort zone. So how you can change that form in one way is you can take the ice cube out of the tray, put it on a table, take a hammer and go boom, all right? That is, and just break that ice cube. Now, you change the form of the ice cube, but you didn't change the structure. It's still ice. And so that ice then is scattered all over. And that's what I define as uncontrolled change. What you really need to do is step back, take that ice cube out of the freezer and set it on the table, and let the environment change the ice cube, because you will change both form and structure of that ice cube by changing an environment of the ice cube, because you're taking it out of a sub-zero cold or freezing element environment to where it keeps the ice cube solid, and you're putting it into a warm environment. So you're changing the environment that's going to change the structure and the form of that ice cube. And then you step back and you watch that ice cube melt. As the ice cube melts, it changes both form and structure. So when the ice cube then melts, that's where you start to work on how do we restructure, we're transforming, we're transitioning into one habit to another habit. We're transitioning into one way of doing something to another way, but we are taking it slow. We are taking a process, and we are taking people with us that will help them through the transition. It's going to be an uncomfortable process, but you want to move towards the uncomfortability. You want to move towards that transition time to where you are changing the structure, changing the form into a new transition, a new way of thinking. So when the environment then melts that ice cube, it is a puddle of water, and that is a new structure, new form, and then you have to put a new structure around it. And as you put that new structure around it with rules, regulations, policies, however you define structure, and then you put it back in the freezer, you have a new way of doing things. But the trick is, how do you create a cycle? How do you create that cycle of change? Because that is then you want to create a new habit that we look at the environment, we look at the way we're going, and we adapt, and we can continually transition from one comfort zone to the next, but create a cycle of change and create a habit that is, we look at the environment and we can transition easily. And the more we transition, the more we practice transitioning from comfort zone to change and transition there, the more that change becomes a habit.
And what's really exciting about that is how much we learn. If we allow other people and their ideas in to learn about other cultures, to learn about other people's experiences, that really can bring some absolutely incredible elements to our learning so that our culture can shift, our belief systems can be informed, our trust levels can be increased. Because once we start, and we'll get into this next week, but once we start to really talk to other people and learn about their value systems and where they come from and what brings them to the positions and the opinions that they hold, we learn so much that can just expand our opportunities so we can think much more creatively and be much more inclusive. That's a way to help welcome people into a community so that they want to stay once they are there.
So people want to feel valued. They want to feel that their sense of well-being, and they want that sense of belonging. And so as you look at that, it's not going to happen overnight. This is a process you have to cognitively think about, consciously think about all the time. And it is a transition from, we're just going to build stuff in our community that we think people will like, to really looking at the environment your community sets for people to feel like they belong. The communities that accept new people and the states that accept new people that weren't born and raised there are growing at a faster rate than communities that are not accepting new people. Right? Or they have the population shows that there are more native born, in other words, more people live in your state that were born and are raised there than there are new people moving in. And what that always tells me is that your state doesn't accept new people very well. You don't have a transition, you don't have an environment that invites new people, that they feel their sense of well-being is withheld and upheld like that. And so as you look at that, if you're growing at below a 3% rate, basically in your state and your population, then you have to look at, are we a welcoming state? Are we welcoming new people? Do we accept them? Do we look at our value system, and do we have a culture, an attractive culture that's going to attract people of our values that we like, and do we accept them? Or do we accept people that don't have our values? That's the important part, because we might, if you're not growing very fast, then you're not accepting people with other values and upholding their values and trying to understand them. In the states that are growing at a rapid rate and have more people moving into them that are born and raised there, so they have a less than 50% native born population, and they're growing at a rapid rate, that state then accepts people with different value systems, and they learn how to live together, and they learn how to accept people with different values. That's where we start to build civility, is accepting people with different values and a different thought process. And that's okay. That's how we all get along.
So I wanted to just put in there that accepting doesn't mean that you just tolerate a new neighbor next door. That can be one way of acceptance, but it may not be the best way to include someone. In fact, it really wouldn't be the best way to include someone. We want to make sure that we engage them, that we find out about them, that we learn about them, that we invite them to be part of our community life, to tell them what happens around the community and who lives here and what kinds of events and things like that. All of those things that we used to do much more readily, we want to be sure and include people who are new to our communities, because it's more than acceptance, it's inclusion, and that's what's going to help people feel welcome and remain in the community.
So it's not about friendships. I mean, you don't have to be the best friends with people.
Mm-hmm.
However, it is about feeling like, when you walk into a room and you're not accepted, you get that feeling of, I don't belong here, so I'm going to leave. I'm uncomfortable. That is the feeling of sense of well-being. Okay, so you want to create the environment where people, if people would walk into a room where you were, they would want to stay. They don't want to just make an appearance and leave. They would like to stay because they feel like they belong there. That's the environment that we want to create. That creates a building, that creates an environment where civility is built. And that's the environment that we want to start building back into our world as we build civility around the world. So if you're on board with that, give us a comment, like this, share this video. Come join us as we start to build civility around the world, and we create communities where people want to live. And we create communities that are family friendly and youth-centered, that attract people. When you build those types of communities, people will bring their jobs with them. They will bring their families with them. They will increase your school populations. They will just start to be involved within your community. But it's all about the environment that you set. It's not what amenities that you offer them, though that is an important part. But above that, it is the environment that you set to where people want to live there.
So we invite you to continue to join us each and every day as we introduce and describe those words of welcome, understand, comfort, and appreciate. So please come back at 11:30 Central Time, Monday through Friday. We're on YouTube and we're on Facebook at Rural Community Solutions. And for those of you who would rather or find it better or would like to listen again to an episode, we are on anchor.com.
Anchor.fm. That's our podcast.
FM, the FM is what I need.
Or if Spotify or Google Cast or Apple, you can get us at Think Like an Entrepreneur, Become a Spark Plug is the name of it. But if you just go to anchor.fm, Frank Spillers, then you'll find our podcast on there. YouTube channel is Rural Community Solutions TV. Follow us there. Subscribe there so you don't miss an episode. Follow us on our Facebook page at Rural Community Solutions, or you can write to us at Frank at G Horizons or
Kim at G Horizons. We'd love to hear from you, and if you'd like some ideas about or just talk about your community, we'd love to engage with you and just give you some ideas about how to design a family-friendly, youth-centered place in your community.
So let's go out and build civility, because it's your responsibility to create the environment to where people feel welcome, understood, comforted, and appreciated. And that's even the environment that you live in. So let's go build a great world. I'm Frank Spillers.
And I'm Kim Spillers. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of the week.
We will see you tomorrow at Rural Community Solutions TV live stream. Have a great day.
Take care.
Bye-bye.